Breaking tonight, Australia's Prime Minister has been evacuated from his own home. Not because of a foreign military, not because of a drone strike, but because of a series of chilling emails threatening to blow up the lodge, the official residence of the Australian leader in Canberra, unless a Chinese dance group cancels its performances across the country. Dear viewers, what happened in Australia's capital this week is far more than a security scare. It is a window into one of the most complex and dangerous fault lines in global politics today, one that runs directly through Australian soil. The threat that emptied the lodge on Tuesday evening at precisely 6:00 p.m. local time, Australian Federal Police arrived at the lodge in Canberra. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was escorted from his official residence and taken to an undisclosed secure location. For several hours, Australia's head of government was effectively a man without a home, displaced by a threat written in Chinese, laced with fury, and directed at one of the world's most controversial performing arts groups. The emails were sent to Shen Yun, a dance and music troupe founded by practitioners of the Falun Gong spiritual movement. The message was unambiguous and terrifying. Large quantities of nitroglycerin explosives, the emails claimed, had been placed around the lodge. The demand was equally clear: cancel every upcoming Australian performance, or, and here is the quote that sent shockwaves through Canberra's security establishment, the Prime Minister's lodge will be blown into ruins and blood will flow like a river. Shen Yun reported the threat to police on Tuesday. Australian Federal Police attended what they called an alleged security incident and confirmed that nothing suspicious was physically located at the premises. Albanese was eventually allowed to return home. By Wednesday morning, he was posting on social media a photo of his cavoodle dog standing guard at the door, with the caption Toto on alert, but all good. A dog at the door. A prime minister forced from his home, and behind it all, a geopolitical battle that has been simmering for decades. Translation: Australia was not the target of random criminal activity. What happened at the lodge is the latest front in Beijing's long campaign against Falun Gong, a campaign that has now reached the front door of a G20 nation's head of government. Who is Shen Yun, and why does Beijing hate them? To understand why a dance group triggered the evacuation of a prime minister, you need to understand what Shen Yun actually is and why China considers it an existential threat. Shen Yun was established in 2006 in upstate New York by practitioners of Falun Gong, a spiritual discipline that combines meditation with moral teachings rooted in the values of truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. Since 1999, the Chinese Communist Party has banned Falun Gong entirely, designating it an illegal cult and launching a brutal, sustained crackdown that human rights organizations have documented in extensive detail for over 2 decades. Shen Yun's elaborate theatrical performances, featuring classical Chinese dance, live orchestral music, and vivid digital backdrops, are not simply cultural entertainment. They are a vehicle. Embedded within the choreography are unmistakable critiques of the Chinese Communist Party, scenes depicting persecution, spiritual resilience, and the suppression of traditional Chinese culture under CCP rule. Beijing despises Shen Yun. Chinese diplomatic missions in countries around the world have repeatedly pressured venues to cancel bookings, lobbied local governments, and reportedly coordinated harassment campaigns against the group. According to Shen Yun's own spokesman, the group has tracked approximately 200 similar threats since March 2024, spanning South Korea, Denmark, Austria, the United States, and now Australia. This week's bomb threat in Australia was not an isolated incident. Exactly 1 year earlier, on February 20, 2025, the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. was evacuated under near-identical circumstances. A bomb threat, written in the same style, targeting Shen Yun performances there. The pattern, stretching across continents and now across years, is unmistakable. Australia caught in the crossfire for Australia, this incident lands at an extraordinarily sensitive moment. Canberra has spent years carefully recalibrating its relationship with Beijing, pushing back on economic coercion, joining the AUKUS security partnership with the United States and United Kingdom, and standing firm on issues of sovereignty and democratic values. At the same time, China remains Australia's largest trading partner. The relationship is irreplaceable in economic terms, even as it grows increasingly fraught in strategic ones. And now, the lodge itself, the symbolic heart of Australian governmental power, has been drawn into a conflict that Beijing would very much prefer the world not to discuss openly. When asked about the incident, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning told reporters she was not aware of the actual situation, but added that China consistently opposes all forms of violent attacks, a carefully calibrated non-answer, dear viewers, acknowledging nothing, denying nothing. Meanwhile, an unnamed Australian government source told the Australian Broadcasting Corporation that Australians should not jump to conclusions about where the threat originated, noting that it could have come from a member of the community hostile to Falun Gong, rather than from state-sponsored actors. That is the careful, diplomatic language of a government that understands exactly how explosive, in every sense of the word, these conclusions could be. The bigger picture, a pattern of intimidation, dear viewers, step back from the individual incident and look at the wider pattern. Falun Gong practitioners and Shen Yun performers operate in democracies around the world under the constant shadow of what advocates describe as a coordinated, transnational campaign by Beijing to suppress, discredit, and silence them. This is not a fringe allegation. It is documented by human rights organizations, intelligence agencies, and investigative journalists across multiple continents. The bomb threat in Canberra, whether ultimately attributed to a state actor, a Beijing-aligned individual, or an independent extremist, represents something deeply troubling: the idea that a foreign government's domestic political agenda can reach across oceans and force the evacuation of an allied nation's democratically elected leader from his own home. That is not simply a law enforcement matter. It is a sovereignty matter. It is the kind of interference that Australia and its allies cannot afford to treat as routine. Prime Minister Albanese, speaking at an event interrupted by protesters on Wednesday, called for calm. He urged Australians to turn the heat down. But heat, dear viewers, is not being generated in Canberra. It is being imported from a political conflict that has its roots in Beijing's 1999 decision to crush a spiritual movement it feared was growing too large, too organized, and too independent for the party's comfort. What happens next? Shen Yun has confirmed it will proceed with its Australian tour. In a statement sent to international media, the group called on the Australian government to conduct a comprehensive investigation into the threats. Australian federal police have not confirmed whether a criminal investigation is underway, nor have they commented on the origin of the emails. The silence at this stage is deliberate. But here is what we know for certain: Australia is now the stage for a confrontation that spans Beijing, New York, Washington, and Canberra. A confrontation between a superpower and a banned spiritual movement. A confrontation that has reached the physical threshold of the Australian Prime Minister's home. And here is what that tells us about the world. We now live in the boundaries between foreign policy, domestic security, religious freedom, and geopolitical rivalry have never been more blurred or more dangerous. Closing, dear viewers, a cavoodle named Toto standing at the lodge door made headlines this week. Anthony Albanese used the image to signal calm, resilience, a touch of Australian humor in the face of something genuinely alarming. But behind the reassuring photo lies a harder truth. Australia's sovereignty, its ability to host a dance troupe, to allow freedom of belief and artistic expression within its borders, without foreign threats, forcing its prime minister into the night, is under pressure. Not from missiles, not from warships, but from emails written in Chinese, laced with explosive threats, and delivered to a performing arts group in one of the world's oldest democracies. That is the nature of the threat Australia faces today. And it demands not just a policing response, but a political one. Until next time, dear viewers, stay informed, stay vigilant, and as always, stay with us.